This 4-year-old beggar girl is beaten in the street by her own father, but a millionaire steps in and says, "Don't hit her, hit me." But her father does something even worse to both of them. Comment on what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The midday sun beat down mercilessly on the streets of downtown Chicago when the first scream pierced the air. Theodore Maverick adjusted his Ray-Bans and quickened his pace, trying to ignore the sound that cut through the air like a razor. At 52, the real estate mogul had learned to filter out the city's noise: honking cabs, hawkers shouting their wares, road rage arguments. But this scream was different. It was a child's scream. Theodore stopped abruptly when he saw the scene unfolding just yards away. A tall, gaunt man, around 35, was gripping a small girl, no more than 6, by the arm and shaking her violently, yelling obscenities that echoed down the street. The child wore a faded and dirty pink dress. Her curly hair was disheveled, and even from a distance, Theodore could see tears streaming down her face. "You're a disgrace!" the man roared, his voice rough with anger and the stench of cheap whiskey. "Because of you, my life is hell." Some people passing by on the sidewalk glanced quickly and steered clear, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to get involved. A store owner pulled down the metal shutter of his shop, pretending not to see anything. An elderly lady muttered something about not getting mixed up in family fights and hurried on. Theodore felt something churn in his gut. Throughout his life, he had built his real estate empire by staying out of other people's problems, focusing only on his deals and the bottom line. He was a meticulous man who calculated every move, every investment, every word. He wasn't one to get involved in street dramas, but there was something in that child's eyes that paralyzed him. The man raised his hand, clearly preparing to hit the girl. That's when Theodore moved without thinking. "Stop!" he shouted, striding across the street in long steps. The attacker turned, surprised by the interruption. Theodore could now see that his eyes were bloodshot, likely from alcohol, and there was an animalistic aggression in his posture. "Mind your own damn business," the man snarled, who Theodore estimated to be around 35. "It's between me and my daughter." "Your business doesn't include hitting a child in broad daylight," Theodore replied, trying to keep his voice steady despite his pounding heart. The girl looked at Theodore with wide, frightened eyes, but there was something else there, a surprising intelligence for her age, as if she were quickly assessing the situation and the people involved. "Your name is Claude Torres, isn't it?" Theodore said suddenly, recognizing the man. "You work as a security guard at my company." Claude narrowed his eyes, clearly surprised to be recognized. "Mr. Maverick, what are you doing here?" "Preventing you from doing something stupid," Theodore replied dryly. "Let go of that child now." For a moment it seemed Claude would obey, but then something changed in his expression. A dangerous glint that Theodore couldn't immediately interpret. "You know what, boss?" Claude said, letting out a bitter laugh. "Since you want to get so involved, how about you share the burden with me?" Before Theodore could understand what that meant, Claude grabbed both him and the girl by the arms with surprising strength. "Let's go for a little walk," he muttered, dragging them down the street. Theodore tried to resist, but Claude was stronger and seemed to be under the influence of something more than just alcohol. The girl didn't fight. She just followed, as if she were used to this kind of situation. "Where are you taking us?" Theodore asked, trying to stay calm as they were dragged through alleys and back streets. "A place where you both can learn a lesson about minding your own business," Claude replied with a cruel smile. They walked for about 10 minutes until they reached a vacant lot on the outskirts of downtown. It was an isolated place, surrounded by high fences and dry vegetation, where only piles of rubble and trash testified to the occasional human presence. It was there that Claude revealed his true nature. With quick and efficient movements, he tied both Theodore and the girl to rusty metal posts sticking out of the ground, using ropes that were apparently already hidden on the site. "Claude, for God's sake," Theodore protested. "What do you think you're doing?" "Giving a lesson," the man replied coldly. "You'll stay here in the sun until you learn to respect who's in charge." The girl said nothing, but Theodore noticed that she didn't seem as surprised as she should be. It was as if this wasn't the first time she had gone through something like this. "What's your name?" Theodore asked softly to the child as Claude walked away. "Iris Valentine," she replied in a small but clear voice. "And you're the rich man who owns those big buildings, right?" Theodore was surprised by the girl's knowledge. "How do you know that?" "I know a lot of people around here. I'm on the streets most of the time." The businessman felt a pang in his chest as he understood the implication of those words. This 6-year-old child lived on the streets of Chicago. Claude turned his attention to them one last time before leaving. "You guys stay there and think about your lives. When I get back, I hope you've learned your lesson." And with that, he simply left, leaving them tied up under the scorching sun. Theodore tried to loosen the ropes, but Claude had done an efficient job. The heat was intense, and he could feel the sweat starting to run down his back. But his biggest concern was the child beside him. "Iris, are you okay?" he asked. "I've been through worse," she replied, with a resignation that broke Theodore's heart. It was then that he realized that his comfortable and controlled life had just been turned upside down, and that this small and brave girl would become the center of a storm he couldn't even imagine. The hours passed like a slow torture. The Chicago sun gave no respite, and Theodore felt his throat getting drier and drier. His business suit, once impeccable, now clung to his sweat-soaked body. But his main concern was not for himself. Iris Valentine remained beside him, tied to the metal post that was already starting to heat up dangerously. The girl didn't complain, didn't cry. She just watched her surroundings with those big, intelligent eyes, as if she were cataloguing every detail of the vacant lot. "Iris," Theodore said with a hoarse voice, "how long have you lived on the streets?" "Since I was little," she replied naturally, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "My dad drinks a lot and gets angry. Then I leave home and walk around the city." "And your mother?" The girl paused for a long time before answering. "She left when I was a baby. Aunt Connie said she couldn't take it anymore." Theodore felt a lump in his throat. This 6-year-old child spoke about abandonment and neglect with a naturalness that revealed a lifetime of suffering. "Do you know the city well?" he asked, trying to keep the conversation going to distract her from the growing heat. "I know everything," Iris said with a proud glint in her eyes. "I know where people hide things, where they sleep, where they fight. I know who's honest and who's not." There was something in the way she said that last part that caught Theodore's attention. "What do you mean by that?" Iris looked around carefully, as if she wanted to make sure no one was listening. "I see a lot of things that adults think kids don't see. Like when Dr. Harrison meets with those men in suits in the lot behind the market." The name made Theodore freeze. Harrison Damasceno was his business partner, a man of 45 he had known for over 10 years. "What men in suits?" "I don't know their names, but they always bring big bags and dig holes there. Once I saw them burying money." The revelation hit Theodore like a lightning bolt. Harrison was involved in something shady, and a street kid had witnessed it all. But before he could ask more questions, they heard footsteps approaching. "Someone's coming," Iris whispered. A young woman appeared at the entrance to the vacant lot, carrying a white bag that looked like hospital equipment. She was about 28, with brown hair tied up in a messy bun, and wore a stained and crumpled nurse's uniform. "My God," she exclaimed when she saw the scene. "What happened here?" "Please," Theodore said with a desperate voice, "help us. We've been here for hours." The woman ran to them, quickly examining the ropes that held them. "Who did this? Are you hurt?" A man named Claude brought us here by force, Theodore explained as she worked to untie the ropes. I'm Theodore Maverick, and this is Iris. Carol Bennett, said the woman, focused on freeing the girl first. I'm a nurse at the city hospital. I was coming back from my shift when I saw movement here. When Iris was finally released, she didn't run or show exaggerated relief. She just rubbed her sore wrists and looked intently at Carol, as if she were assessing whether she could trust her. Are you okay, honey? Carol asked gently, kneeling down to be at the girl's height. I am, Iris replied simply. It's happened before. Carol's expression hardened. What do you mean it's happened before? It was then that Theodore, finally free from the ropes, noticed something in the nurse's face. There was a contained anger there, a personal pain that suggested that Iris's suffering touched on something deep in her own history. My dad does things like this when he's angry, Iris explained with the same disturbing naturalness. But he's never brought anyone else along. Carol clenched her fists. That's unacceptable. Where do you live? I need to take you to a safe place. I live in a boarding house near downtown, Theodore said, still processing everything that had happened. But Iris, I live with my dad when he's not too angry. When he is, I just sleep on the streets. Carol looked at Theodore with an expression that mixed indignation and determination. This can't go on like this. I completely agree, Theodore said. But I don't know what I can do. Claude works for me, but he clearly has serious problems. Works for you? Carol asked, surprised. I own Maverick Construction. Claude is one of our security guards. Iris spoke up for the first time since being released. Can you fire him? The simple question revealed a hope that the girl was trying to hide. Theodore realized that she saw in him a possibility of change in her life. It's complicated, he said carefully, but I'll find a way to help you. Carol got up, brushing the dirt off her clothes. Come on, I'll take you to a place where you can recover. You need water and medical attention. As they walked towards Carol's car, an old but well-maintained white sedan, Theodore couldn't stop thinking about Iris's revelation about Harrison. If it was true that his partner was involved in something illegal, it could explain many strange things he had noticed in recent months. Carol, he said when they reached the car, can I ask you why you were passing by here? This lot is quite out of the way from the hospital. The nurse hesitated for a moment before answering. Sometimes I come here when I need to think. It's a place where no one bothers me. There was something in her voice that suggested that she also had her secrets, her personal pains that brought her to isolated places like that. Iris got into the back seat without making a sound, but Theodore noticed how she observed everything, the interior of the car, the expressions of the adults, the roads they traveled. It was as if she were constantly collecting information, always alert. Where are we going? Theodore asked. My place, Carol replied. It's small, but you can clean up and rest a bit before we decide on the next step. But as she drove through the streets of Chicago, Carol couldn't imagine that her decision to help a businessman and an abandoned child was about to put her at the center of a web of corruption and revenge that would change all their lives forever. Carol's house was in a simple neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago, a modest two-bedroom with a small backyard. When they entered, Theodore was struck by the stark difference between that cozy environment and his luxury apartment in the city center. Make yourselves comfortable, Carol said, pointing to the floral-patterned sofa in the small living room. I'll get you some water. Iris didn't sit down immediately. Instead, she walked around the room, observing every detail, the photographs on the shelf, the books piled on the coffee table, the crucifix on the wall. Do you live alone? The girl asked Carol directly when she returned with 2 glasses of ice water. I do, Carol replied, handing the glass to Iris first. What about you, honey? Besides your dad, is there anyone else? I had Aunt Connie, but she left too. She said she couldn't take care of me because she already had her own kids. Theodore noticed how Carol clenched her fists upon hearing that. There was definitely something in her personal history that made her react intensely to child abandonment. "Iris," Theodore said carefully, "you said before about seeing Dr. Harrison with those men. Can you tell me more details?" The girl looked at him seriously. "Why do you want to know?" "Because Harrison is my business partner. If he's doing something wrong, it could hurt me too." Iris pondered for a moment, as if she were deciding how much she could trust him. "They meet every week, always on Thursday night. Dr. Harrison arrives first, then a black SUV comes with two men in suits. Can you remember anything else about these men?" "One of them is bald and has a scar on his face. The other one is short and always looks around like he's scared. They talk quietly, but once I heard the bald one talking about city project and extra money, Theodore's blood ran cold. His construction company had recently won several major bids from the city, all negotiated primarily by Harrison. If there were irregularities in these contracts. "Carol," he said, turning to the nurse, "I need to use your phone. It's urgent." "Sure, it's in the kitchen." Theodore headed to the old rotary phone attached to the kitchen wall and dialed his office number. After a few rings, his secretary answered. "Mrs. Davis, it's me, Theodore. I need you to get all the contracts for the municipal construction projects from the last 6 months and bring them to my place today." "Mr. Maverick, what time is it? Are you all right? You sound strange." "I'm fine. Just had some trouble today." "It's very important, Marlene. And don't mention this to anyone, especially not to Dr. Harrison." "Understood, sir. I'll bring the documents to your apartment in 2 hours." When Theodore returned to the living room, he found Carol carefully examining some scratches on Iris's arm. "Are these marks recent?" she asked in a professional voice, but Theodore could sense the contained anger. "They're from today, when my dad held me tight," Iris replied naturally. "And these other older marks?" Iris shrugged. "My dad gets angry, easily." Carol looked at Theodore with an expression that spoke volumes. "We need to do something." "I agree, but it's complicated. If I simply fire Claude, he might take revenge on Iris. And if I involve the authorities without proof..." "The proof is right here," Carol said, pointing to the bruises on the girl. "This is child abuse, Theodore." It was the first time she had called him by his first name, and there was an unexpected intimacy in the way she said it. Theodore realized that despite having known each other for only a few hours, the day's events had created a strange connection between them. "I don't want my dad to be arrested," Iris said suddenly, surprising the two adults. "Why, honey?" Carol asked gently. "Because then I won't have anyone, and I know he's not always bad. When he doesn't drink, sometimes he buys me candy and tells me stories." The emotional complexity of the situation hit Theodore hard. Iris loved her father, despite everything. Separating a child from an abusive parent wasn't a simple decision when that parent was the only family she knew. "Iris," he said carefully, "what if there was a way for you to be safe without your dad being arrested? Would you like that?" "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'll find out." At that moment, Carol's phone rang. She answered with a worried expression that quickly turned to alarm. "What do you mean, suspended?" she said into the phone. "But I didn't do anything wrong." Theodore and Iris watched as the conversation continued, Carol's voice getting increasingly agitated. "Medical negligence? That's impossible. Who made this accusation?" When she hung up, she was visibly shaken. "What happened?" Theodore asked. "I've been suspended from the hospital. Someone made an anonymous complaint saying that I committed medical negligence with a patient last week." "Is that true?" "Of course not. I've always been very careful with my patients." Carol sat down heavily on the sofa. "I don't understand. Why would someone do this?" Iris, who had remained quiet during the conversation, suddenly spoke up. "Miss Bennet, did the man who called you have a deep voice and talk slowly?" Carol looked at her in surprise. "How do you know that?" Because I've heard that voice before. It was the bald man who meets with Dr. Harrison. The silence that followed was heavy. Theodore felt the pieces of a dark puzzle starting to fall into place in his mind. "Carol," he said slowly, "did anyone know that you helped us today?" "No. I mean, I didn't tell anyone. But what? When I found you in the lot, there was a car parked down the street. I didn't think much about it at the time, but now I remember that there was someone inside watching." Iris confirmed with a nod. It was a black SUV, the same one that always comes to the meetings. The realization hit Theodore like a punch to the gut. They were being watched. Harrison and his cronies knew that Theodore had discovered something, and now they were taking steps to silence anyone who could help him. "Carol, you're in danger because of us," he said, feeling a terrible guilt. "And Iris too," Carol added, looking protectively at the girl. Then the phone rang again. Theodore answered, and Claude's rough voice echoed through the receiver. "Boss, I hope you learned your lesson today, but it seems like you didn't quite get the message." "Claude, what do you want?" "I want you to stop sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, and especially stop asking questions about certain people, otherwise next time there might not be anyone to save you." The call ended, leaving the three in a tense silence. Theodore realized that he had completely underestimated the situation. It wasn't just a troubled employee with personal issues. It was something much bigger and much more dangerous. That night, Theodore barely managed to sleep on Carol's couch. She had insisted that he and Iris stay at her place, claiming that it wouldn't be safe for either of them to return to their respective homes. The girl slept peacefully in the guest room, but Theodore remained awake, mentally reviewing all the contracts that his secretary had brought. The documents revealed a disturbing pattern. In the last 6 months, Maverick Construction had won 5 major bids from the city, all with values significantly above market, and in all cases, it had been Harrison who had conducted the negotiations. "Can't sleep?" Carol asked, appearing in the living room with 2 mugs of tea. "How could I?" Theodore replied, accepting the mug gratefully. "I discovered that my own company is being used to launder money. My partner is apparently involved with criminals, and now you've lost your job because of us." Carol sat down next to him on the sofa. "Theodore, I need to tell you something." There was a hesitation in her voice that made him turn completely to look at her. "When I was a child, I was also abandoned," she said, looking at the mug in her hands. "My mother left me in an orphanage when I was 5 years old. She said she would come back for me, but she never did. Carol, I grew up in the foster care system, going from family to family. Some were good, others not so much. That's why I became a nurse. I wanted to help people, especially children who went through what I went through." Theodore felt a wave of understanding. "That's why you reacted so strongly to seeing Iris. She reminds me of myself at the same age. That resignation, that way of accepting suffering as if it were normal. It's exactly how I was." They remained silent for a few moments, connected by a mutual understanding that didn't need words. "Carol, I need to ask you something," Theodore said finally. "I know I've already messed up your life a lot, but could you take care of Iris for a few days? I need to investigate this situation with Harrison, and it could be dangerous." Of course," she replied without hesitating, "but you're not going to do this alone." "What do you mean?" "I know people at the hospital, at City Hall, in various places around the city. If Harrison is involved in corruption, someone must know something. We can investigate together." The next morning, Theodore woke up to the smell of coffee and pancakes coming from the kitchen. He found Iris sitting at the table, eating with more appetite than she had shown the day before. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "Yes. It's been a long time since I slept in a real bed," the girl replied. "Miss Bennett said I can stay here for a few days. Would you like that? Iris nodded vigorously. She's nice and she doesn't yell. The simplicity of the comment broke Theodore's heart. For a 6-year-old child, not yelling was already a luxury. Carol entered the kitchen wearing casual clothes. "I've changed my mind about something," she said. "I'm not going to let you do this alone. Iris can stay with my neighbor, Mrs. Peterson. She's a retired teacher and loves children." "Carol, it's too risky." "Theodore, they already got me involved when they made me lose my job. Now it's personal." 2 hours later, the two were in downtown Chicago, beginning their investigation. The first destination was a bar frequented by City Hall employees, where Carol knew some people. "Danny!" she called out, approaching the counter, where a middle-aged man was drinking beer, even though it was still morning. "Carol, what a surprise! I heard you had some trouble at the hospital." "That's exactly what I came to talk to you about. Do you know a bald man with a scar on his face who works on City Hall business?" Danny looked nervously around before answering. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I think he's involved in my suspension." The man took a long gulp of beer before speaking. "If you're talking about who I think you're talking about, you better let it go, Carol. Those guys don't play around." "But do you know who he is?" "His name is Oswald Perez. He works as an intermediary in bidding processes. Let's just say he has influence with some important people at City Hall." Theodore approached. "And who are you?" Danny looked at him suspiciously. "And you are?" "Theodore Maverick, from Maverick Construction." The man's expression changed immediately. "Ah, so you're Harrison's boss. Do you know my partner?" "I know him by sight. He and Oswald are pretty close. I always see them talking in the hallways of City Hall." Theodore and Carol exchanged meaningful glances. "Danny," Carol said, "if I told you that I think they're involved in something illegal, would you help me?" The man hesitated, clearly torn between fear and the desire to help a friend. "Look, Carol, I can't say much, but I can tell you one thing. If you want evidence, there's a meeting every Thursday night in the lot behind the market, and today is Thursday." When they left the bar, Theodore was lost in thought. Iris was right about everything. The meetings, the location, even the day of the week. That girl is very observant," Carol agreed. "But Theodore, if we go there tonight, I know it's dangerous, but it may be our only chance to get concrete evidence." They returned to Carol's house in the early afternoon, where they found Iris playing in the backyard with Mrs. Peterson, a friendly lady who had immediately been charmed by the girl. "How is she?" Carol asked the neighbor. "She's a lovely child," Mrs. Peterson replied, "very polite and intelligent, but I notice that she's always alert, as if she expects something bad to happen. It's a result of what she's been through," Theodore explained sadly. When Mrs. Peterson left, Iris approached them with a serious expression. "You're going to that place tonight, aren't you?" she asked. "How do you know?" Carol said, surprised. "Because today is Thursday, and you've been talking quietly all day and looking at each other. It's the same way adults act when they're going to do something dangerous." The girl's perspicacity continued to impress Theodore. "Iris, we want you to stay here with Mrs. Peterson while—" "No," she interrupted firmly. "If you're going there, I'm going too." "Absolutely not," Carol said. "It's too dangerous. But I know the lot better than you. I know where you can hide without being seen, and I know all the escape routes if something goes wrong." Theodore realized that she was right. Iris knew every stone of that city, every alley, every hiding place. She could be a valuable asset. "It's crazy," Carol murmured. "This whole situation is crazy," Theodore replied. "But maybe it's our only chance." At 8 o'clock that night, as darkness began to take over Chicago, the three quietly headed to the lot behind the market, Iris guided them through paths that Theodore would never imagine existed, moving with the confidence of someone who had grown up on those streets. "There," she whispered, pointing to a pile of empty crates. "From here, you can see everything without." Being seen, at exactly 8:30, Harrison arrived at the location. 10 minutes later, a black SUV parked, and 2 men got out, exactly as Iris had described. "It's him," Theodore whispered, recognizing Oswald Perez even in the dim light. But what they witnessed next exceeded their worst expectations, and Theodore realized that he had completely underestimated the extent of the conspiracy in which he was involved. From the makeshift hiding place behind the crates, Theodore, Carol, and Iris watched a scene that would change everything. Harrison and Oswald were talking in hushed tones, but occasionally a few words reached them through the night wind. "Next bid?" "City School," said Oswald, gesturing with a manila envelope in his hands. "Maverick doesn't suspect anything," Harrison replied, receiving the envelope. "He signs whatever I put in front of him." Theodore felt a mixture of anger and humiliation as he realized how he had been manipulated by his own partner. For years, he had blindly trusted Harrison to conduct the company's important negotiations. "Someone else is coming," Iris whispered, pointing in another direction. A third man approached, walking with difficulty. Even in the darkness, it was possible to see that he was drunk. "Claude," Theodore murmured, recognizing the staggering gait. "What is my dad doing here?" Iris asked, her voice filled with confusion and fear. The question went unanswered when the 3 men gathered in the center of the lot. Now they could hear the conversation more clearly. "You screwed up today," Oswald was saying to Claude, his voice filled with irritation. "You weren't supposed to involve the boss directly." "He was sticking his nose where it didn't belong," Claude replied, stumbling slightly. "The girl talked too much." Iris grabbed Carol's arm, her eyes wide with terror. "They're talking about me," she whispered. "What exactly did she see?" Harrison asked, his voice tense. "I don't know exactly, but she's on the streets all the time. She sees everything that happens. She may have seen you burying the money." The silence that followed was heavy. Theodore could feel his heart beating so loudly that he was afraid the men could hear him. "We have to take care of this," Oswald said finally. "The kid is a risk." "And Maverick too," Harrison added. "This afternoon he asked to see all the municipal contracts from the last few months. He's getting suspicious." "Then we solve both problems at once," said Claude, with a coldness that made Iris tremble. Carol pulled the girl closer, wrapping her arms around her protectively. Theodore felt a growing rage taking over him. Not only had they used his company for illegal schemes, but now they were threatening an innocent child. "Easy," said Oswald. "We can't be hasty. If anything happens to Maverick now, it'll attract too much attention. It needs to look natural." "What about the girl?" Harrison asked. "I'll take care of her," Claude replied in a tone that made Theodore's blood run cold. "I'm the father. No one will question if I decide to discipline my daughter." Iris began to cry silently, tears streaming down her face. Carol hugged her tighter, whispering words of comfort in her ear. "It needs to be discreet," Oswald continued. "A household accident, street kid, alcoholic father, these things happen." "What if she's already told someone what she saw?" Harrison asked. "She told the boss, but he'll be too busy with his own problems to worry about that," Claude said, with a cruel laugh. "Tomorrow, I'll go to his company and give him news that will crush any concerns he has." "What news?" Oswald asked. "I'll tell him that I discovered irregularities in the contracts and that I'm thinking about making a complaint. He'll be so desperate trying to convince me not to say anything that he won't even remember the girl." Theodore realized the cruel genius of the plan. Claude would blackmail him with the threat of exposure, forcing him to focus on protecting the company and ignore Iris. "What about the nurse?" Harrison asked. She was also there when you were found." "We've already taken care of that," said Oswald. "She was suspended today. No job, no credibility. If she tries to say anything, no one will believe her." "Perfect," said Claude. "In a week, all our problems will be solved." The three men began to disperse, but not before Oswald handed a small briefcase to Harrison. "Your share of last week's bid," he said. "And remember, tomorrow morning you'll go to the bank and transfer another 50 grand to the account we agreed on." "I always do," Harrison replied. "Maverick doesn't even check the company statements. He trusts me completely." When they were finally alone in the lot, the three remained motionless for several minutes, processing everything they had heard. "They're going to kill me," Iris whispered, her voice almost inaudible. "No," Theodore said firmly, turning to look directly at her. "I'm not going to let that happen. But you heard what they said. My dad will." "Your dad isn't going to do anything," Carol interrupted, her voice filled with determination. "We're not going to let him." "But how?" Iris asked. "You can't stay with me forever." Theodore realized that she was right. They couldn't simply hide her indefinitely. They needed a plan that would neutralize the threat permanently. "Iris," he said carefully, "you said you saw them burying money. Could you take us to the exact spots?" "I can." "But why?" "Because if we get evidence of what they're doing, we can use it against them." "It's too risky," Carol protested. "If they catch us digging." "It's riskier to do nothing," Theodore replied. "You heard what they said. In a week, both Iris and I will be in mortal danger." Iris spoke up in a small but determined voice. "I'll take you there. I know exactly where it's hidden." "Are you sure?" Carol asked. "I am. And there's one more thing you need to know." "What?" "I not only saw them burying money, I saw them burying other things too. Documents, important papers, it's all in the same place." Theodore felt a spark of hope. If they could recover not only the money, but also documents that proved the corruption scheme, they would have enough ammunition to protect themselves and bring the criminals to justice. "When?" he asked. "It has to be now," Iris said. "In the morning there are always people at the market, and they might come back tomorrow night." "She's right," Carol agreed. "If we're going to do this, it has to be now." Theodore looked at the two women who had become so important in his life in just 2 days. A courageous nurse who had risked everything to help strangers, and a 6-year-old girl who showed more courage than most of the adults he knew. "Then let's go," he said, getting up. "But promise me one thing. If something goes wrong, if someone shows up, you run. Don't try to help me, just run." "I promise if you promise the same thing," Carol replied. "And I promise I'll take you the safest way," Iris added. With their hearts pounding and aware that they were about to cross a line that would change their lives forever, the three headed to the place where Iris had seen the criminals hide the evidence of their crimes. Iris guided them through narrow alleys and paths that Theodore had never imagined existed in Chicago. The girl moved with the confidence of someone who knew every stone of the city, stopping occasionally to check if they were being followed. "It's here," she whispered, pointing to a vacant lot, different from the one where they had been tied up that afternoon. This one was larger, surrounded by low fences and filled with dry vegetation. "Are you sure?" Theodore asked, observing the seemingly empty place. "I am." "There, near that dead tree," Iris said, pointing to a dry maple tree in the center of the lot. "They always dig on the left side." Carol rummaged through her bag and pulled out a small flashlight. "I brought this from the hospital, but we have to be careful with the light." They entered the lot silently, stepping slowly to avoid making noise. When they got close to the tree, Iris pointed to an area where the ground seemed to have been recently disturbed. "It's here," she said with absolute certainty. Theodore knelt down and began to dig with his hands, feeling the dry, hard earth under his fingers. Carol helped him, using a stone found on the site as a makeshift tool. "Did you find anything?" she asked after a few minutes of digging. Not yet. Wait, Theodore said, feeling something solid. There's something here. Carefully, they removed more earth until they revealed a metal box buried about 1/2 meter deep. It was an old toolbox, heavy and locked with a simple padlock. How are we going to open it? Carol asked. Iris approached and examined the padlock. I can try. I learned a few things on the street. To the adult's surprise, the girl took a bobby, pin from Carol's hair and a small stone, working deftly on the padlock mechanism. After a few minutes, they heard a click. How did you learn that? Theodore asked, impressed. Corner Store Joe taught me. He said kids on the street have to know how to fend for themselves, Iris replied naturally. When they opened the box, they found exactly what they expected, bundles of money, documents, and photographs. Theodore picked up a stack of papers and began to examine them with the dim light of the flashlight. They're falsified contracts, he murmured. Overvalued amounts, forged signatures. This is enough evidence to take them down. Carol examined some photographs. Theodore, look at this. The photos showed meetings between Harrison, Oswald, and several other people whom Theodore recognized as important City Hall employees. In one of them, there was also a man in a suit whom he did not know. Who is this? He asked, pointing to the stranger. That's the mayor, Iris said, looking over his shoulder. How do you know? I see him on television sometimes, when I'm in stores that have TVs. Theodore felt his blood run cold. The scheme was even bigger than he had imagined. It involved the city's mayor himself. We have to take all this to the authorities, Carol said. What authorities? Theodore asked bitterly. If the mayor is involved, who can we trust? It was then that they heard the sound of cars approaching. Headlight beams began to illuminate the entrance to the lot. Someone's coming, Iris whispered, terror etched on her face. Hide everything, quick, Theodore said, closing the box and pushing it back into the hole. But it was too late. 3 cars entered the lot, and men began to get out, illuminating the area with powerful flashlights. I knew they were going to come back here, said a familiar voice. It was Harrison. Spread out and search, Oswald ordered. They have to be around here. Theodore, Carol, and Iris hid behind the dead tree, but they knew it would be a matter of time before they were found. The lot wasn't big enough to offer many hiding places. Over there, shouted one of the men, pointing a flashlight in their direction. Run, Theodore whispered, each one in a different direction. No, Iris said firmly. Trust me. The girl guided them to a part of the fence that seemed intact, but when they got closer, Theodore realized that there was a small, almost imperceptible hole at the base of the wall. It's this way, she said, starting to crawl through the hole. Carol was next, followed by Theodore, who barely managed to squeeze through the tight opening. On the other side, they found themselves in another lot, this one used as a junkyard. How did you know about this hole? Carol asked, still panting. I've used it for a long time, when I need to hide from my dad or other people, Iris replied simply. Through the wall, they could hear the men searching the lot, where the documents were hidden. They found it, said a voice. The box has been opened. Shit, Theodore murmured. They know we were there. Search the entire area, Harrison ordered. They can't have gone far. What now? Carol asked. Iris thought for a moment. I know a place where we can stay hidden until morning. But it's far from here. We can't go back to your house, Theodore said to Carol. They know where you live. And I can't go to my apartment for the same reasons, he added. Then let's go to my secret place, Iris said. No one else knows about it. They walked for over an hour through deserted streets and dark alleys, always staying away from the illuminated areas. Iris led them to a part of town that Theodore had never visited, a poor neighborhood where the houses were small and the streets were unpaved. It's here, she said, stopping in front of what appeared to be an abandoned building. Iris, this place looks dangerous, Carol protested. "It does on the outside, but it's safe on the inside, and no one comes here." The girl guided them through a side entrance that led to an apartment on the ground floor. Surprisingly, the interior was clean and organized, with some old but functional furniture. "How do you know this place?" Theodore asked. "It belonged to Mrs. Evans. She used to let me stay here sometimes when my dad was really angry. When she died, no one wanted the apartment because it's in a dangerous neighborhood, and you come here alone. Sometimes, when I need a place to sleep that's safe." Theodore looked around the small apartment and felt a mixture of admiration and sadness. A 6-year-old child had created her own refuge, a place where she could feel safe in a world that constantly mistreated her. "Iris," he said, kneeling down to be at her height, "I need you to understand something. After what happened today, they're going to look for us even more. We may have to leave the city." "Where to?" she asked, her big eyes widening. "I don't know yet, but would you come with us?" Iris looked at Carol, then back at Theodore. "You really want to take me, even knowing that I'm going to be trouble?" "You're not going to be trouble," Carol said, kneeling down too. "You're going to be our family." "Family?" Iris repeated, as if the word were foreign in her mouth. "Yes," Theodore said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "If you want to, of course." Iris didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the window and looked out, observing the empty streets of her neighborhood. "My dad's going to be really angry," she said finally. "We're not going to let him hurt you anymore," Carol promised. "But what if he finds us? What if Dr. Harrison and those men find us?" "Then we'll protect ourselves," Theodore said. Together, Iris turned to them, and for the first time since they had met, she smiled, a small but genuine smile. "Okay," she said, "let's be a family." But even in that moment of connection, none of them could imagine that the greatest danger was yet to come, and that the next morning would bring a revelation that would change everything they thought they knew about the conspiracy that surrounded them. Morning arrived with the sound of distant sirens echoing through the streets of Chicago. Theodore woke up on the old sofa in Mrs. Evans's apartment, feeling every muscle in his body sore after the night of tension. Carol slept in a nearby armchair, and Iris was curled up in the only room, finally resting after months of living in constant alert. Theodore's cell phone rang, startling them awake. It was his secretary, Mrs. Davis, and her voice was filled with panic. "Mr. Maverick, where are you? The company is surrounded by the IRS." "What?" Theodore asked, still trying to process the information. "They arrived early this morning with search warrants. They're taking all the documents, computers, everything. And there's more. They're looking for you and Dr. Harrison." Theodore looked at Carol, who had heard everything. Iris was also awake, watching with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. "Marlene, where is Harrison?" "No one knows, sir. He hasn't shown up today and his car isn't in the parking lot. The agents said they have an arrest warrant for him." "And for me?" "Not yet, but I think it's a matter of time. Mr. Maverick, what's going on?" Theodore hung up without answering, his mind working quickly. Harrison had fled, probably taking all the evidence that could compromise him, and now the authorities were investigating the construction company. "They anticipated us," Carol said. "They must have realized that you discovered the scheme, or someone warned them," Theodore added grimly. Iris approached them. "Mr. Maverick, does this mean you're going to be arrested?" "I don't know, honey. I hope not. But you didn't do anything wrong," she said with the simple logic of a child. "Sometimes that doesn't matter. Sometimes people are guilty just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time." In that moment, violent pounding on the apartment door froze everyone in place. A rough voice shouted from outside, "Open this door! I know you're in there." It was Claude, and from his slurred speech he was clearly drunk. "Iris, get out of there now, girl. I'm going to teach you not to hang around with strangers." Iris ran behind Carol, trembling with fear. Theodore headed to the door, but didn't open. Claude, go away. You have no right to be here. Yes, I do. She's my daughter, and I'm taking her now. Not after what you did yesterday. Oh, yeah, Claude said with a cruel laugh. Then you don't know the news, huh? What news? The cops are looking for you for corruption, money laundering, a whole bunch of stuff, and you know who made the report? Me! The silence inside the apartment was deafening. Theodore felt like he had been punched in the stomach. That's right, Claude continued. I went to the police station early this morning and told them everything I know about your schemes with Harrison. Now you're a fugitive from justice. You lied to the police, Theodore said, trying to stay calm. Didn't lie at all. I told them that you and Harrison were stealing money from the city, that you threatened me to keep quiet, that you even kidnapped my daughter to blackmail me. Carol covered her mouth with her hands, horrified by Claude's ability to twist the truth. And you know what else? He continued. I also told them that you two are involved with that nurse, that the three of you are planning to run away with my daughter. None of that is true, Theodore shouted. Prove it, Claude replied. You think the cops are going to believe you or me? A corrupt businessman or a working father trying to protect his daughter? The cruel genius of Claude's plan was revealed in full. He had anticipated them, telling his version of the facts before they could defend themselves. And his version turned Theodore and Carol into the villains, while he painted himself as the victim. Iris, Claude shouted, banging on the door more violently. Get out of there now, or I'll break down this door. We have to get out of here, Carol whispered. How? He's in front, and there might be more people outside. It was then that Iris spoke up, her voice small but determined. There's another way out. She led them to the bathroom, where there was a small window that overlooked an alley behind the building. It's tight, but we can fit, she said. Carol went first, followed by Iris. Theodore had more difficulty, but managed to squeeze through the opening. Outside, they could hear Claude still shouting and banging on the door. Where to now? Carol asked. I need to go to my company, Theodore said. I have documents stored at home that can prove my innocence. It's too risky. The police must be watching. I have no choice. Without those documents, I'll be considered guilty automatically. Iris tugged on his shirt sleeve. Mr. Maverick, there's something I haven't told you. What? I saw more than just the money and the papers. I saw Dr. Harrison talking to my dad several times, long before you met. Theodore and Carol exchanged glances, processing the implication of this revelation. What do you mean, Iris? They've known each other for a long time. My dad always said he had a rich friend who was going to help our family. Now, I think he was talking about Dr. Harrison. The final piece of the puzzle began to fall into place in Theodore's mind. Iris, when did your dad start working at my company? About 6 months ago. And when did you start seeing Harrison with those men? Around the same time. Theodore felt a wave of understanding and horror. Claude had been planted in his company by Harrison. Everything had been planned from the beginning. Claude's hiring, the fraudulent bids, even the chance encounter on the street where Claude was abusing Iris. It was all a setup, he murmured, from day one. What? Carol asked. Harrison. He planned everything. He put Claude to work at my company, started the corruption scheme using my name, and when he needed a scapegoat, he'd use you. Carol completed, understanding, and Iris would be the bait to compromise me even further. A battered child I would try to help, creating an emotional connection that would leave me vulnerable. Iris looked at him with tears in her eyes. So you only helped me because you were tricked? The question broke Theodore's heart. He knelt, down to be at the girl's height. Iris, it doesn't matter how it started. What matters is that now you're part of my family, and I'm going to protect you no matter what happens. Even if it means you're going to be arrested? Even then. At that moment, sirens began to sound closer. Through the windows of the surrounding buildings, they could see curious residents looking at the street. "They're coming," Carol said. "We have to decide now. Do we run or do we face it?" Theodore looked at Iris, at Carol, and felt a determination he hadn't known for years. They had tried to use an innocent child as a pawn in their dirty games. They had destroyed the life of a dedicated nurse, and they had turned his company into a front for criminals. "We're going to face it," he said, "but our way." "How?" "Iris knows this city better than anyone. She knows where the evidence is hidden, and the three of us together are smarter than them." "You have a plan?" Carol asked. "I'm starting to," Theodore replied, watching the sirens approach. "But it's going to require us to completely trust each other." It was then that they realized that it wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about fighting for a family they had chosen against enemies who underestimated the power of love and determination. Theodore's plan was risky, but it was the only chance they had. Over the next few hours, they split up around the city, using Iris's intimate knowledge of the streets of Chicago to stay one step ahead of the police. "Iris," Theodore said as they hid in an abandoned auto repair shop, "I need you to take me to all the places where you saw Harrison and the others hide things. All of them." "There are many places," the girl replied. "They don't keep everything in the same hole." "How many places?" Iris closed her eyes, concentrating. 6. No, 7 different places. Carol spoke up. "We can't go to all of them without getting caught." "We don't need to go to all of them," Theodore said. "Iris, in which of those places did you see the most activity? Where did they seem to hide the most important things?" The girl reflected carefully. "In the cemetery. Whenever they take things there, they get very nervous and look all around." "Cemetery?" Carol asked, surprised. "It's the perfect place," Theodore said, understanding the logic. "No one goes digging around in cemeteries, and at night it's practically deserted." "But how are we going to get in? And what if it's a very exposed place?" Iris smiled for the first time in days. "I know how to get in, and I know exactly where they hide things." At 5 in the afternoon, as the sun began to set, they headed to the city cemetery. Iris guided them through a side entrance that she knew, a hole in the fence that was used by homeless people to seek shelter during storms. "It's there," she whispered, pointing to an area in the back of the cemetery where there were several old and abandoned tombs. "How are you so sure?" Theodore asked. "Because I saw them digging next to that tomb with the crooked cross," Iris explained. "And because afterward they always come back to check if everything is okay." Theodore and Carol began to dig in the place indicated by Iris, using makeshift tools they found around the cemetery. After about an hour of work, they found not one, but 3 buried boxes. "My God," Carol murmured, opening the first box. "There's a lot of money here." The second box contained documents that Theodore immediately recognized as original contracts, the real versions of the bids, showing the true amounts before they were inflated. But it was in the third box that they found what would change. "Everything." "Theodore," Carol said, her voice trembling, "you need to see this." Inside the box were personal documents, birth certificates, identity cards, and especially old photographs. In one of them, there were 2 small boys, clearly brothers, next to a woman. Theodore picked up the photograph and examined it more. And closely, one of the boys had a small scar on his chin, exactly like Harrison. "They're brothers," he said, the realization hitting him like a lightning bolt. "Harrison and Claude are brothers." "How is that possible?" Carol asked. Iris approached and looked at the photograph. "That woman is my grandmother," she said simply. The silence that followed was absolute. Theodore looked at the girl, then at the photo, trying to process the information. "Your grandmother," he repeated. Yes. My dad always talked about her. He said she had other children, but they left when they were little. Iris, Carol said carefully. That means that Harrison is your uncle. The girl nodded naturally, as if that wasn't surprising to her. I know. I always knew. And you never told us? Theodore asked. You never asked. And besides, my dad told me never to talk about Uncle Harrison to strangers. Theodore felt like the ground had disappeared from under his feet. The whole conspiracy was a family affair. Harrison and Claude were brothers, and they had used their own niece as bait to destroy his life. How long have you known that Harrison is your uncle? Carol asked. Since forever. Sometimes he would come to our house when I was little, but then he stopped coming. Why? Because he and my dad fought over money. My dad said that Uncle Harrison was getting rich while we were struggling. The final pieces of the puzzle fell into place in Theodore's mind. Harrison had become rich through corruption schemes, but he didn't share the profits with his brother. Claude, resentful and alcoholic, had become the perfect pawn for Harrison's plan to find a scapegoat. And you were the bait, he said to Iris, feeling a mixture of anger and protection. What does bait mean? The girl asked. It means they used you to lure me into their problem, Theodore explained gently. Iris reflected on this for a moment. So my dad hurt me on purpose, so that you would want to help me. The question was asked with such innocence that it broke Theodore's heart. Yes, honey, I'm sorry. To his surprise, Iris didn't seem shocked or hurt. Instead, she simply said, then at least something good came out of all this. How so? I met you, and now I have a real family. Carol knelt down and hugged the girl, tears streaming down her face. You're very strong, Iris. I had to be, but now I don't have to be strong alone anymore. At that moment, they heard the sounds of cars approaching the cemetery. Headlight beams began to illuminate the main entrance. They found us, Carol whispered. How? Theodore asked. Probably someone saw us coming in, Iris said, or my dad told them about this place. We have to take the evidence, Theodore said, starting to gather the most important documents. There's no time, Carol said. There are too many boxes. Then, photograph everything, said Iris, pulling Theodore's cell phone. That way you have the evidence even if they take the boxes. It was a simple but brilliant solution. Theodore began to quickly photograph all the important documents, while Carol organized the evidence in order of importance. I'm done, he said, after a few frantic minutes. Now we have to get out of here without being seen, Carol said. Follow me, said Iris, starting to move between the graves. I know another way. They moved silently between the tombstones, Iris guiding them with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of that place. The voices of their pursuers became more and more distant. There, she whispered, pointing to an area of the wall where a large tree grew. We can climb. Carol went first, followed by Iris. Theodore was almost over the wall when he heard a familiar voice behind him. Don't move. It was Harrison, pointing a gun at him. Next to him was Claude, with a cruel smile on his face. Did you think we were stupid? Harrison said. We knew you'd come back here. How did you find us? Theodore asked, trying to buy time for Carol and Iris to escape. Claude knows his daughter's habits better than anyone, Harrison replied, and we know you better than you imagine. Get down from there, Iris, Claude ordered. We're going home, now. On the other side of the wall, Theodore heard Iris crying, but he also heard Carol whispering something to her. She's not going anywhere with you, Theodore said. Yes, she is, Claude replied, because if she doesn't come, I'm going to kill you and the nurse. It was then that something unexpected happened. On the other side of the wall, they heard police. Sirens approaching, but they weren't coming in their direction. They were coming from downtown. What's going on? Harrison asked, clearly confused. One of Oswald's cronies approached running. Harrison, the police have surrounded the mayor's office. Someone handed over evidence about the scheme. The confident expression on Harrison's face instantly dissolved, and Theodore realized that his last card had been played. The confusion that followed was total. Harrison began to shout contradictory orders to his cronies. Claude looked nervously around, and the sound of sirens intensified, coming from various directions of the city. "How is this possible?" Harrison murmured, his gun trembling in his hand. "All the evidence is here." "Not all," said a familiar voice from the other side of the wall. It was Carol, but her voice sounded different, more confident, less scared. "Theodore, are you all right?" "I am," he replied, keeping his eyes fixed on Harrison's gun. "What did you do?" "Iris remembered something important," Carol said. "Tell them, honey." Iris's small voice echoed over the wall. "Uncle Harrison, you forgot about the papers you hid at the school." Harrison's face visibly paled. "What papers?" "The ones you hid at the school where I used to study. I saw you talking to the principal and then hiding a folder under her desk." "That's impossible," Claude said. "The girl didn't even go to school." "Yes, I did," Iris replied. "I just didn't stay very long because you always came to pick me up angry." Theodore realized what had happened. Iris had remembered another hiding place, and Carol had found a way to deliver that information to the authorities. "How did you manage to notify the police?" he asked. "Mrs. Peterson," Carol replied. "When we left the house, she followed us worried. We found her on the street and told her everything. She knows people in the state police, people who aren't involved with the city's corruption." Harrison was visibly desperate now. "Claude, we have to get out of here. Now." "What about the girl?" Claude asked. "Forget the girl. If the cops catch us here—" "No," Claude said firmly. "I'm not leaving without my daughter." It was the first time Theodore saw something resembling genuine paternal love in Claude's eyes. Beneath all the violence and alcoholism, there was still a father who cared about his daughter. "Claude," Theodore said carefully, "do you really want what's best for Iris?" "Of course I do. She's all I have left." "Then look around you. Look at what you're doing. Your daughter is on the other side of that wall, terrified because you're pointing a gun at the people who protected her." Claude looked at the gun in Harrison's hand, then at the wall where his daughter was hiding. "Iris," he called out in a choked voice, "Daddy's here, honey." "I know," she replied, but her voice was full of fear. "Daddy did a lot of wrong things," Claude continued, tears beginning to stream down his face. "But I love you. You know that, right?" "I know," Iris said, her own voice tearful. "Claude, stop it," Harrison said impatiently. "We don't have time for family drama." "Yes, we do," Claude said, turning to his brother. "We have all the time we need." It was then that Theodore realized that something had changed in the dynamic. Between the two brothers, Claude was no longer blindly following Harrison's orders. "Claude," Harrison said in a threatening voice, "you're going to obey me, or I'm going to have to treat you like I treat everyone who gets in my way." "You're going to kill me?" Claude asked with a bitter laugh. "Like you killed our mother?" The silence that followed was heavy. Theodore felt that he had just discovered another dark secret of the family. "What are you talking about?" Harrison asked, but his voice was less firm. "You think I don't know? You think I didn't find out what you did with her medicine? Money? I didn't." "You took the money that was supposed to buy her medicine and used it for your first business deals," Claude said, his voice filled with years of repressed resentment. "Our mother died because you left her without treatment." Harrison took a step back, clearly shaken by the accusation. "And now you want me to do the same thing with my daughter, to use her like you used our mother." "It's not the same thing," Harrison protested. "Yes, it is. You always use the people you love to get what you want, and then you discard them when they're no longer useful." On the other side of the wall, Iris had stopped crying and was listening attentively to the conversation. Theodore realized that she was finally understanding the complexity of the family situation that surrounded her. "Uncle Harrison," she said suddenly, her clear voice cutting through the tension. "Why don't you like me?" The simple and direct question caught Harrison off guard. I like you, Iris." "No, you don't. You use me to make Daddy angry with other people. That's not liking." Iris's childish wisdom exposed the cruelty of Harrison's plan in a way that no adult could. "And Daddy," she continued, "do you drink because you're sad about Uncle Harrison?" Claude couldn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was broken. "Yes, honey. Daddy drinks because it hurts so much to see what our family has become. But now it can get better," Iris said with the simple hope of a child. "If you stop fighting and hurting people." It was at that moment that the sirens became deafening. Several police cars were arriving at the cemetery, coming from different directions. "It's over," Theodore said to Harrison. "You have nowhere to run." Harrison looked around, realizing that he was surrounded. His cronies had already fled, leaving him alone with Claude and a gun that suddenly seemed useless. "You don't understand," he said desperately. "I did all this for our family, so that we would have money, power, respect." "You did all this for you," Claude replied. "It was always just for you." The lights from the police cars began to illuminate. The cemetery, voices with megaphones, ordered them to surrender. "Harrison," Theodore said, "there's still time to do the right thing. Hand over the gun and surrender." For a moment it seemed that Harrison would consider the suggestion, but then something changed in his expression, a desperate determination that Theodore recognized as dangerous. "If I can't have the family I want," Harrison said, pointing the gun directly at Theodore, "then no one will have any family at all." It was then that Claude did something that no one expected. He threw himself in front of Theodore at the exact moment that Harrison pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the cemetery, followed by Iris's scream of horror from the other side. Of the wall, Claude fell to the ground, wounded in the shoulder, but alive. "Daddy!" Iris shouted, and before anyone could stop her, she was climbing over the wall to get to her father. "No, Iris!" Carol shouted, but the girl was already on the other side, running towards Claude. Harrison, in total panic, pointed the gun at his approaching niece. It was then that Theodore acted out of pure instinct, throwing himself on Harrison and wrestling for the gun. When the police finally reached them, they found Harrison subdued, Claude wounded but conscious, and Iris hugging her father, crying not from fear, but from relief that he was alive. "It's okay, honey," Claude whispered. "Daddy's going to be okay. And this time, Daddy's going to do the right things." The days that followed Harrison's arrest were a whirlwind of testimonies, investigations, and revelations that shook the entire city of Chicago. Theodore found himself at the center of a media storm, but this time as a victim, not as a suspect. Claude was hospitalized at the city hospital, where Carol had returned to work after her suspension was revoked. The shoulder wound wasn't serious, but the doctors wanted to keep him under observation due to his alcohol withdrawal. "How is he today?" Theodore asked, entering the room where Claude had been hospitalized for 3 days. "Better," replied Carol, who had become responsible for his care. "The worst of the withdrawal is over." Iris was sitting in a chair next to her father's bed, drawing in a new notebook that Theodore had bought for her. But this time, her drawings weren't just of birds. They included people, houses, families. "Hi, Daddy," she said when Claude opened. His eyes. "Mr. Maverick came to visit you." Claude tried to sit up in bed, wincing in pain. "Theodore, you saved my life," Theodore said, pulling up a chair to get closer. "You don't need to apologize for anything." "Yes, I do. I did a lot of wrong things. With you, with Iris, with everyone." Theodore observed the man who had been his enemy just days before. Sober and without Harrison's manipulative influence, Claude seemed like a completely different person. "Claude, the investigators want to talk to you about everything you know about Harrison's scheme." "I'm going to tell them everything," Claude said firmly. "Every conversation, every meeting, everything he told me to do. It'll implicate you, too," Theodore warned. "I know, but my daughter deserves an honest father, even if it's a father in prison." Iris looked at her father with those big, intelligent eyes. "Daddy, if you go to prison, where am I going to live?" The question everyone feared had finally arrived. Claude looked at Theodore and Carol before answering. "Iris, do you remember when I said that you were all I had left? I remember. I was wrong. You're not all I have left. You're all that matters. And what matters to you is to be happy and safe." "I'm happy with you," Iris said, even knowing that it wasn't completely true. "Honey, Daddy is sick inside in his heart and head. And when Daddy gets sick, he hurts you without meaning, too." Iris lowered her eyes, remembering all the times her father had lost control. "But can Daddy get better?" she asked with the simple hope of a child. "He can, but it's going to take a long time. And you can't wait for Daddy to get better to be happy." Theodore felt his heart clench as he watched the dialogue between father and daughter. Despite everything that had happened, it was evident that Claude truly loved Iris. "What are you trying to say, Daddy?" Claude looked at Theodore and Carol. "I'm saying that maybe it's better for you to stay with people who can take care of you, right? People who won't hurt you when they get angry. You want to give me to them?" Iris asked, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I want you to be happy," Claude replied, his own tears streaming. "And I know that with them you'll be." Carol approached the bed. "Claude, it doesn't have to be a permanent separation. When you're better, you can visit Iris whenever you want. Even after everything I did. Especially after everything you did," Theodore replied. "You proved that you can change, that you can put Iris's well-being above your own interests." "Daddy," Iris said, climbing onto the bed and hugging Claude carefully so as not to hurt his wound, "I'm going to miss you. And I'm going to miss you, honey. But I'm going to work hard to get better so that one day I can be the father you deserve." 2 weeks later, Theodore was in his office trying to rebuild his company when he received a call that would change everything again. It was from the lawyer who was taking care of the legal side of Iris's custody. "Mr. Maverick, there's a problem," the lawyer said. "A relative of Iris has appeared claiming custody of the girl." "What do you mean? What relative?" "An aunt from the maternal side. She says she has better financial conditions and that it's her right to take care of her niece." Theodore felt the world collapse. After weeks of believing that he would finally have a family, he now faced the possibility of losing Iris to a person he didn't even know. "Who is this woman?" "Connie Santos, sister of Iris's deceased mother. She lives in Miami and has a stable financial situation." Theodore remembered Iris mentioning an Aunt Connie who had left when she was little. Can she really take Iris? "Legally, she has priority over people who aren't family, unless we can prove that she's not fit to take care of the child." That night, Theodore talked to Carol and Iris about the situation. The girl was quiet for a long time before speaking. "I remember Aunt Connie," she said. "She was nice to me when I was little." "Would you like to live with her?" Carol asked, trying to hide her own pain. "I don't know," Iris replied honestly. "I like you, but if she's real family—" "Iris," Theodore said, kneeling down to be at her height, "real family isn't about blood. It's about love, care, protection. It's about people who choose to stay together. But maybe it's better for me to go with her," Iris said, demonstrating a maturity that was too sad for her age. "That way you won't have problems because of me." "What problems?" Carol asked. "I know that taking care of me is difficult and expensive, and dangerous as you've seen." Theodore hugged the girl, feeling a determination growing in his chest. "Iris, the only thing difficult would be living without you." "Really? Really? You want to know something? Before I met you, I had a lot of money, a big company, a luxurious apartment, but I didn't have a family. I didn't have anyone who cared about me for real. And now I have you two, and that's worth more than all the money in the world." 3 days later, Connie Santos arrived in Chicago. She was a woman of 40 years, well-dressed and well-groomed, who worked as a bank manager in Miami. "I came to get my niece," she said directly upon meeting Theodore, Carol, and Iris in the courthouse waiting room. "Aunt Connie," Iris said, hiding behind Carol. "Hi, honey. Wow, how you've grown. And you're so thin." Theodore observed the interaction carefully. Connie demonstrated genuine affection, but there was something mechanical in her approach. "Iris," said Connie, crouching down to be at the girl's height, "I came to take you to Miami. You're going to have your own room. You're going to study at a good school. You're going to have everything you need." "What about them?" Iris asked, pointing to Theodore and Carol. "They're going to continue with their lives. You're not their responsibility." The coldness of the phrase hit Theodore like a slap in the face. Connie saw Iris as a family obligation, not as a chosen daughter. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" he asked Connie. They moved away, leaving Carol with Iris. "Ms. Santos, can I ask where you were when Iris needed help, when she was being abused by her father?" "I didn't know," she replied defensively. "If I had known, I would have come to get her sooner. But you knew she existed. You knew that Claude had problems with alcohol." "I can't solve the problems of the whole family," Connie said coldly, "but now I'm here to do my part." Theodore realized that Connie was acting out of moral obligation, not out of love. Iris would be well cared for materially, but she would just be another responsibility in her aunt's life. When they returned to where Carol and Iris were waiting, they found the girl crying silently. "What's wrong, honey?" Theodore asked. "I don't want to leave," she whispered. "I want to stay with you." Connie sighed impatiently. "Iris, stop the drama. You're going to like Miami. There's shopping, movies, the beach." "But they're not there," Iris replied simply. It was then that Theodore made a decision that would change everything once again. "Ms. Santos," Theodore said with a firmness that surprised even himself, "I'd like to make a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" she asked, clearly suspicious. "How about spending a few days here in Chicago? Get to know Iris's situation better, see how well she's adapted, talk to her about what she really wants?" "I know what's best for my niece," Connie replied dryly. "With all due respect," Carol said, speaking for the first time, "you don't know Iris. You don't know what she's been through, how she's healed, what makes her happy." "And you do?" Connie retorted. "You who have known her for only a few weeks?" Iris, who had remained quiet listening to the adults' discussion, suddenly spoke up in a clear voice and determined voice. "I know," she said, making everyone turn to look at her. "I know what makes me happy." "What, honey?" Connie asked in a condescending tone. "People who don't yell at me when I do something wrong? People who ask how my day was? People who hug me when I have nightmares?" The simplicity of the answer silenced everyone. "Iris," Connie continued, trying to remain patient, "I can do all that too." "You can, but you don't," the girl replied with a child's brutal honesty. "You left when I was little and never came back. You didn't even call." The silence that followed was awkward. Connie clearly had no answer to the accusation. "Things were complicated back then," she said finally. "And they're not now?" Iris asked. Theodore realized that he was witnessing one of the most important conversations of Iris's life. The girl was finally having a say in her own destiny. "Iris," he said carefully, "what do you really want?" The girl looked at Connie, then at Carol, and finally at Theodore. "I want to stay with you, but I want Aunt Connie to be my real aunt, not just on paper." "What do you mean?" Connie asked. "I want you to come visit me, call me, ask how I am, but I want to live here with my chosen family." The expression chosen family hit Theodore deeply. In so few words, Iris had perfectly defined what they had become. "That's not possible," Connie said. "Legally, I have more rights." "Rights aren't love," Iris interrupted. It was then that something unexpected happened. The door of the room opened and Claude entered, leaning on crutches but clearly determined. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but I need to talk to all of you." "Claude," Theodore said, "how did you get out of the hospital?" "With a lot of insistence," he replied with a weak smile. "But I needed to be here." Claude addressed Connie. "You must be Joaquina's sister." "I am. And you're the father who abused my niece." "I am," Claude said without trying to defend himself. "And I came here to do something I should have done a long time ago." He turned to the courthouse official who was accompanying the meeting. "I want to officially renounce custody of my daughter." "Daddy?" Iris said, surprised. "It's not because I don't love you, honey. It's because I love you too much to keep being selfish." Claude took an envelope from his pocket. "Here's everything documented. I renounce custody in favor of Theodore Maverick and Carol Bennett, who have proven to be the most qualified people to take care of Iris." Connie protested immediately. "That doesn't change anything. I still have rights as an aunt." "You do," Claude agreed. "But now you need to prove that you're the best option for Iris, not just that you're blood family." The courthouse official examined the documents. With the formal renunciation of the father, the situation changes significantly. Now it will be a dispute between two groups who want to adopt the child. "And in that case," said Theodore's lawyer, who had arrived at that moment, "the child's emotional well-being has fundamental weight in the judicial decision." "What does that mean?" Connie asked. "It means that Iris will have a voice in the decision," the lawyer explained. "The judge will want to hear what she prefers and assess which environment is best for her development." During the following 2 weeks, everyone's life was in suspense. Connie remained in Chicago, trying to build a relationship with Iris, but it was evident that it was more of a campaign to win custody than a genuine interest. "Aunt Connie took me shopping for clothes today," Iris told Theodore and Carol one night, "but she was on the phone the whole time talking about work." "And how did you feel?" Carol asked. "Invisible," Iris replied, with a sadness that broke the two adults' hearts. Claude, in turn, had begun treatment for alcoholism and visited Iris 3 times a week. It was evident that he was struggling to become the person his daughter deserved, even knowing that he wouldn't be the one to raise her. "Daddy is different," Iris observed after one of those visits. "He listens to me when I talk." "How do you feel about that?" Theodore asked. "Happy and sad at the same time," she said, with the honesty that adults sometimes envied. "Happy because now he treats me well. Sad because it took so long." The final hearing was scheduled for a Friday in December. The whole city seemed to be talking about the case, the child who had exposed a corruption scheme and was now fighting for the right to choose her own family. On the night before the hearing, Iris couldn't sleep. Theodore found her in the living room, looking out the window at the streets of Chicago. "Scared about tomorrow?" he asked, sitting down next to her. "A little," she admitted. "What if the judge decides that I have to go with Aunt Connie? Then we'll visit you whenever possible. We'll write letters, call, do everything to continue being part of your life. Promise." "I promise. But Iris, you need to understand something. No matter what happens tomorrow, you'll always be our daughter at heart. Even if I live far away? Even if you live on the moon," Theodore said, making her smile. "Mr. Maverick," she said after a few moments of silence. "Yes? Thank you for saving me that day on the street." Thank you for saving me too. I saved you? How? You taught me what a real family is. Before I met you, I was alive, but I wasn't living. Carol appeared at the door of the living room, also unable to sleep. What are you doing up? Talking about how lucky we are, Iris replied naturally. Lucky how? Carol asked, joining them on the sofa. Because we found each other, Iris said. Even with all the bad things that happened, in the end, we became family. True, Carol agreed, hugging the girl. And tomorrow, Theodore said, we're going to the courthouse to show the judge that family isn't about documents or money. It's about what? Iris asked. About love, Theodore and Carol replied at the same time, making Iris laugh. That dawn, the three slept together on the living room sofa, embraced as the family they had become, ready to fight the next day for the chance to continue together officially. The morning of the hearing dawned cloudy in Chicago, with a threat of rain that left the air heavy and tense. Theodore wore his best suit. Carol chose a discreet but elegant dress, and Iris wore a light blue dress that Carol had bought especially for the occasion. How are you feeling? Theodore's lawyer asked as they walked to the courthouse. Nervous, Carol admitted. What if the judge decides that Connie has more rights? Then we'll fight in the higher court, the lawyer replied, but I'm confident that the truth will prevail. Iris walked between Theodore and Carol, holding both of their hands. Occasionally she looked back to see Claude, who followed them at a respectful distance. Even though he was no longer legally her father, he had insisted on being present. Is Daddy coming too? She asked. He is. He wants to show the judge that he supports our decision, Theodore explained. And that's good. It's very good. It shows that all the adults who love you agree on what's best for you. At the courthouse, they found Connie waiting with her own lawyer. She had dressed formally and carried a briefcase full of documents, proving her financial and social situation. Good morning, Iris, she said when they approached. Are you ready to go live in a big city? Aunt Connie, Iris replied politely. I haven't decided that yet. Of course not, honey. It's the judge who decides. No, Iris said firmly. The lawyer said that I can say what I think. Connie seemed annoyed by the answer, but said nothing. When they were called to the hearing room, Theodore felt his heart pound. The judge was a man of about 60 years, with a serious but not hostile expression. We are here, he said, to decide what is the best arrangement for the minor Iris Valentine Santos. I will listen to everyone involved before making my decision. Connie was the first to speak. She presented her documents, spoke about her stable financial situation, her spacious house in Miami, the educational opportunities she could offer. Your Honor, she said, I am the only blood relative of the child willing to assume her responsibility. I can offer financial stability and the conviviality with the real family. When it was Theodore and Carol's turn, their lawyer presented a different dossier. In addition to financial documents, it included psychological reports on Iris's development in recent weeks, letters from neighbors and acquaintances, and especially Iris's own drawings showing her emotional evolution. Your Honor, the lawyer said, we are not here disputing material resources. We are fighting for a child's right to remain in an environment where she has demonstrated exceptional emotional growth. The judge carefully examined all the documents presented. Then he addressed, Claude, Mr. Torres, I understand that you voluntarily renounced custody of your daughter. Can you explain your reasons? Claude stood up, clearly nervous. Your Honor, for months I mistreated my daughter because of my problems with alcohol. These people, he said, pointing to Theodore and Carol, showed me what it means to love a child for real. And you agree with them having custody? I completely agree. They saved Iris's life, and they saved my soul too. The judge made some notes and then addressed Iris. Iris, do you understand that we are deciding who you are going to live with? I understand, Your Honor. And what would you like to say about that? Iris stood up, looking very small in the large courtroom. But when she began to speak, her voice was firm and clear. "Your Honor, I know that Aunt Connie is my blood family, and I like her, but family isn't just about blood." "What do you mean?" "When I was scared, it was Miss Bennet who comforted me. When I was hungry, it was Mr. Maverick who fed me. When I cried at night, it was them who stayed with me until I fell asleep." The judge listened attentively, clearly impressed with the girl's maturity. "And your Aunt Connie? Can't she do those things too?" "She can, but she didn't when I needed her. She only showed up now because she has to." Connie protested. "That's not true. Miss Santos," the judge said firmly, "the child is speaking." "Please allow her to finish," Iris continued. "I don't want to live with someone who sees me as an obligation. I want to live with people who chose me, who fought for me, who love me the way I am." "And who are those people?" "Mr. Maverick and Miss Bennet. They are my chosen family." The silence in the room was total. Even Connie seemed touched by the girl's words. "Iris," said the judge, "do you understand that your aunt can offer you more material opportunities?" "I understand, but the most important opportunity I can have is to be loved, and I already have that." The judge made some more notes, then addressed Connie. "Miss Santos, would you like to respond to what we have just heard?" Connie was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was choked. "Your Honor, I came here thinking I was doing what was right, but listening to my niece." She paused, clearly struggling with her emotions. "Maybe I arrived too late. Maybe the right thing to do is to accept that she has already found her family." The murmur of surprise echoed through the room. No one expected Connie to give up the dispute. "Are you sure?" the judge asked. "I am, but I would like to ask for one thing." "What?" "That I can continue being Iris's aunt, not as a legal guardian, but as extended family. I want to be part of her life, the right way this time." Iris looked at Theodore and Carol, who nodded encouragingly. "I would like that," she said to Connie. "I want to have a real aunt." The judge smiled for the first time during the entire hearing. "Well, that makes my decision much easier." He stood up, and everyone in the room did the same. "After analyzing all the evidence and listening to all the testimonies, I declare that custody of the minor, Iris Valentine Santos, is granted jointly to Theodore Maverick and Carol Bennet." The relief that took over Theodore was so intense that he had to lean on the table. Carol began to cry with joy, and Iris ran to hug them both. "Does that mean we're a real family now?" she asked. "We always were," Theodore replied. "Now it's just official." Claude approached the group, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he said to Theodore and Carol. "Thank you for showing me what it is to love for real." "Daddy," Iris said, turning to hug him too, "you can always visit us." "I will visit, and I'm going to keep getting better to be the father you deserve, even if I don't live with you." Connie also approached. "Iris, can I give you a hug?" "You can, Aunt." When they hugged, Connie whispered in the girl's ear, "I'm sorry for taking so long to show up." "It's okay, Aunt," Iris said, completing the phrase that had been interrupted. "The important thing is that you're here now." 6 months after the hearing, life had found a new rhythm for everyone. Theodore had rebuilt his company from scratch, this time with total transparency and a focus on social projects. Carol worked at the city hospital in the morning and at a private clinic in the afternoon, and Iris attended a school where her exceptional intelligence could finally flourish. "How was school today?" Carol asked when Iris arrived home on a Thursday afternoon. "The teacher said my essay was the best in the class," Iris replied proudly. "It was about family, and I wrote about you." "That's great, honey. And what did you write?" "That family isn't just who you're born with, but who you choose to stay with." Theodore, who had arrived home from work a few minutes before, smiled as he heard the answer. Very wise. I learned from you, Iris said simply. That night, while they were having dinner, Iris made an announcement that caught the two adults by surprise. Tomorrow, Daddy finishes his treatment at the recovery center. That's true, confirmed Theodore. He called today to let me know. And he wants to celebrate with us, Iris continued. Can I invite him for dinner here on Sunday? Theodore and Carol exchanged glances. The relationship with Claude had improved greatly in recent months. He visited Iris regularly, had been 5 months sober, and had landed a job at an auto repair shop. Of course she can, Carol said. How about we invite Aunt Connie too? Really? Iris asked, excited. It'll be like a party for our big family. Big family? Theodore asked. Yeah. You two are my small family who live with me. Daddy and Aunt Connie are my big family who visit me and love me from afar. The way Iris had mentally organized her family relationships once again impressed the adults. The following Sunday, the small house they had rented after leaving Mrs. Evans's apartment was full of life. Claude arrived early, bringing a cake he had made at the bakery where he worked on weekends. Connie came from Miami, loaded with gifts and stories about the big city. Daddy, you're different, Iris observed during lunch. How so, honey? Your eyes are brighter, and you smile more. Claude smiled, confirming his daughter's observation. It's because now I sleep well at night. Without booze, without remorse, without fear. And do you have plans for the future? Theodore asked. I do. I want to open my own repair shop one day. And I want to be the best father possible for Iris, even living apart. You're already a good father, Iris said. Different from Mr. Maverick and Miss Bennet, but good in your own way. How so different? Connie asked, curious. Daddy teaches me practical things like fixing bikes and making kites. Mr. Maverick teaches me about business and responsibility. Miss Bennet teaches me about caring for other people. And me? Connie asked. What do I teach you? Iris thought carefully before answering. You teach me that it's possible to come back, that even when someone leaves, they can decide to come back and be part of the family again. The answer deeply touched Connie. That's true. And I intend to keep coming back always. Forever? Iris asked. Forever. After lunch, while the adults talked in the living room, Iris went to her room to get something. She returned carrying a thick notebook. What's that? Carol asked. My family diary, Iris replied. The teacher suggested that I write about the good things that happen. She opened the notebook to a specific page. Can I read a part? Of course, Theodore said. Today I understood that I was lucky to go through bad things, Iris read, because if I hadn't gone through them, I would never have known what real love is. Before, I thought love was when someone didn't hit me. Now I know that love is when someone hugs me without me asking, when someone asks if I'm okay, when someone gets sad if I'm sad. The silence in the room was total. Everyone was clearly moved. There's more, Iris continued. I learned that family isn't about being perfect. Daddy did wrong things, but he learned to do right things. Aunt Connie left, but she came back. Mr. Maverick and Miss Bennet sometimes get too worried about me, but it's because they love me. Iris, Claude said. His voice choked. Can you forgive me for what I did? I already forgave you, Daddy, the day you threw yourself in front of that gun to protect Mr. Maverick. Why? Because that's when I understood that you love me more than you love your problems. The emotional depth of the answer left everyone speechless. And there's one last thing I wrote, Iris said, turning to the last page of the notebook. One day, when I grow up, I want to help other children who go through what I went through. I want to show them that there's always hope, even when it seems like there isn't. How do you want to do that? Carol asked. I don't know yet, but I know I want to do it. because you showed me that one person can change another person's life just with love. Theodore stood up and hugged Iris. You've already changed our lives, honey. And you've changed mine. Connie spoke up. Iris, can I make a proposal? What proposal? How about we create a project together? Something to help other children, like you? Really? Really? I have contacts in Miami. You have the experience, and your parents here have the determination. Theodore and Carol exchanged glances, seeing a possibility they hadn't considered before. What kind of project? Theodore asked. A place where children in at-risk situations can stay safe while their families receive help, Connie suggested. Not an orphanage, but a family support center. With psychologists, social workers, and especially people who understand what these children go through, Carol added, enthusiastic about the idea. And I could talk to the children, Iris said. Tell them my story so they can see that it's possible to be okay. Claude, who had remained quiet listening to the conversation, spoke up. I can help too. I know I did a lot of wrong, but I learned a lot about how someone can change. Maybe that can help other parents who are going through what I went through. You would do that? Theodore asked. I would. It would be my way of compensating for the harm I caused. Iris looked around the room, at all the people who now made up her extended family, and smiled a smile that lit up the entire room. Then, let's do it, she said with the determination she had learned from Theodore, the compassion she had learned from Carol, the honesty she had learned from the pain, and the hope she had found in love. Let's make a place where other children can discover that family isn't about perfection, but about not giving up on each other. And so, on a Sunday afternoon in Chicago, a 7-year-old girl who had survived the worst of humanity began to plan how to spread the best of it to the world. 2 years later, on a sunny December morning, Iris woke up with 9 years complete, a news that would change everything once again. Theodore and Carol were waiting for her in the kitchen with mysterious smiles and an official envelope in their hands. What's this? She asked, still rubbing her eyes. Open it and see, Carol said, handing her the envelope. Iris carefully read the document, her eyes widening as she understood the meaning of the words. It's the authorization for the Iris Valentine Family Support Center? She asked, incredulous. It is, confirmed Theodore. The city council approved our project. We're going to be able to help other families. Iris jumped out of the chair and hugged both of her parents at the same time. I can't believe you put my name on it. It was your idea, Carol said. It's only right that it bears your name. During the previous 2 years, the project had grown from a Sunday conversation to a detailed and well-structured plan. Connie had secured funding from companies in Miami. Theodore had donated land that his reconstructed construction company owned, and Carol had coordinated a team of volunteer professionals. When are we going to start? Iris asked. Construction starts next month, Theodore replied. It should be ready in 6 months. And can I help? Of course. You're our official consultant on how a child thinks, Carol joked. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was Claude, who now visited the family 3 times a week and had become an integral part of their lives. Good morning, everyone, said, entering with a cake in his hands. I came to celebrate my brilliant daughter's birthday. Daddy, guess what? Iris said, running to show him the document. Claude read it carefully, his face lighting up progressively. My daughter is going to have a center with her name on it. Our center, Iris corrected, because it was everyone's idea. During the special birthday breakfast, Iris asked a question that caught everyone by surprise. Can I tell you something I discovered? Of course, Theodore said. I discovered that what happened to me was bad, but it was also good. How so, honey? Carol asked, concerned. Because if it hadn't happened, I would never have learned that people can be very bad and very good at the same time. And I would never have met you. Claude swallowed hard. Iris, you don't need to thank me for the suffering I caused. I'm not thanking you, Daddy. I'm explaining that even bad things can turn into good things if we know what to do with them. And what did you do with the bad things? Theodore asked. I transformed them into love, into family, into a desire to help other people. The depth of the answer coming from a 9-year-old child left the three adults moved. You know what else I discovered? Iris continued. What? That the greatest force in the world isn't anger. It's not revenge. It's forgiveness. Why do you think that? Carol asked. Because when I forgave Daddy, he was able to heal. When I forgave Uncle Harrison, I stopped having nightmares. When I forgave Aunt Connie, I gained a bigger family. Claude couldn't contain himself any longer and began to cry. Iris, I don't deserve a daughter like you. Daddy, it's not about deserving, it's about loving. In the afternoon, more guests arrived for the birthday party. Connie came from Miami, bringing the news that she had secured a transfer to work in Chicago. Really? Iris asked. You're going to live here? I am. I got tired of loving my family. From afar. I want to be close to help with the center and to be a real present aunt. The party also featured Mrs. Peterson, who had become Iris's adopted grandmother, and several neighbors who had followed the family's transformation over the years. Iris, Mrs. Peterson said during the party, do you remember what you were like 2 years ago? I remember. I was very sad and scared. And how do you feel now? Iris thought carefully before answering. Complete. Like all the parts of me finally fit into the right place. And what are those parts? The part that was Daddy's daughter, the part that chose Mr. Maverick and Miss Bennett, the part that gained Aunt Connie, and the part that wants to help other children. During the cutting of the cake, Iris made a silent wish. When asked what she had wished for, she smiled mysteriously. I wished for the center to help many families find each other like we found each other. And how do you think that will happen? Theodore asked. By showing people that family isn't about being the same, but about accepting each other differently, that love isn't about never making mistakes, but about always trying to get better. At the end of the party, when all the guests had left, the nuclear family gathered in the living room for a tradition they had created. Each one talked about a good thing that had happened during the year. I'll go first, Carol said. My good thing was seeing Iris discovering that she can be childish and wise at the same time. Mine, Theodore said, was realizing that building a family is the most important project I've ever done in my life. Mine, said Claude, was learning that being a father isn't about being perfect, but about loving more than your own flaws. Everyone turned to Iris, waiting for her answer. My good thing, she said, was discovering that I can remember the bad things without being sad, because now I know that they brought me to you. And what do you hope for in the next year? Carol asked. I hope that the center helps other children discover that there's always hope, that there's always someone willing to love, and that family is the strongest thing in the world. That night, as Theodore and Carol put Iris to bed, she made a final observation that perfectly summarized her journey. You know what's funny? She said, already lying in bed. What? Her parents asked. I always thought that family was about people who were born together, but I discovered that family is about people who choose to grow together. And what do you think of our family? Theodore asked. I think we're proof that love is stronger than anything, stronger than pain, stronger than fear, stronger than the past. And are you happy? Carol asked. I'm more than happy, Iris replied, closing her eyes with a smile on her face. I'm home. 6 months later, the Iris Valentine Family Support Center opened its doors for the first time. On the day of the inauguration, a plaque at the entrance bore a phrase written by Iris herself. Here families meet, heal, and learn that love is stronger than any storm. And so, A girl who had known the worst of humanity became living proof that love can transform any pain into hope, any end into a new beginning, any stranger into family. In the city of Chicago, where everything began on a scorching hot afternoon, the story of Iris Valentine became legend. Not the legend of a child who suffered, but the legend of a child who loved, forgave, and taught the world that family isn't an accident of birth, but a daily choice of not giving up on each other. And every time a new child arrived at the center, scared and distrustful, Iris was there to say the words that changed her own life. You're not alone. Family isn't about being perfect. It's about being loved exactly as you are.